Elijah Cummings passed away just a few days ago. And I guess it was a shock to some people, and to others it really wasn't. There were obviously health problems and different things that were going on associated even with his age. But I think the significance of Elijah Cummings' death should be more of a road sign, I believe, to us than anything else. But there was something about some of the things that I heard after his death was announced that bothered me. I saw a mixture of emotions from Democrats, from colleagues, from Republicans. Not that sides matter just because someone has died, but what bothered me was the fact that I saw this kind of this knee-jerk response from some people. Mind you, I don't believe in just simply celebrating someone's death because we disliked them. I don't believe that it's respectful, obviously, to the family. I don't believe that it's respectful to the people that loved someone, that cared for someone. And I believe more than anything else that when someone has died, regardless of how you felt about that person, that their death should be honored because they were a human being and because they were loved and they were respected by many. But I think the biggest thing that concerned me was that anyone who spoke the truth about Elijah Cummings' true legacy that was being left behind, particularly in the last 20 years of his life, it's like there was this immediate knee-jerk reaction that said, well, you're not supposed to talk that way about him. He's dead. And there was something that bothered me about that. And then I realized really the next day what was bothering me. I feel like that sometimes in America, we kind of have this stigma that once a person has died, that their legacy now becomes this, I don't know, they become this beacon of hope. They become this enlightened figure in the eyes of Americans. It's like, the last 20 to 30 years of their lives, their bad decisions, their scandals, everything that embodies who they were upon this earth is suddenly turned into this enormous burst of light that everyone is simply supposed to talk about and be mesmerized by. And that bothers me. I think that John McCain serves as a perfect example of that, and he was a Republican. A Republican in name, or should I say in theory. But what I'm saying in that is that John McCain, there were things about him and there were things about the legacy that he left behind that I thought that he was being set ablaze for the world to revere and admire. And there's nothing wrong with being admired in your death, but I believe that speaking the truth about an individual whose legacy affected us historically should be talked about. Or else, what are we leaving behind? What markers are we leaving behind for our children to look and know and see that it was at this point in time and in history that something was wrong, that something was off? What markers are we leaving for our children? And so no, I am not going to be quiet, and nor is anyone else going to be quiet about the legacy of governance by Elijah Cummings. It reminds me of, how many people, thousands upon thousands of Germans that came home to their families and they were admired, and they were loved, and they were respected by their colleagues, and they were the heroes of their sons, and the heroes of their daughter. They were loving fathers, they were loving husbands, they were these amazing figureheads to their families and to their colleagues and even to their country. And yet they could walk right out of the door and ensure that millions upon millions of Jews and their lives came to an end. And they were responsible for that. Loving fathers, loving husbands, respected people, ensured that 6 million Jews were dead. We don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We don't simply revere a man because he was loved and respected by all of these different people. Now, comparing Elijah Cummings to someone like a Nazi or a German soldier is obviously on the extreme side. But I'm using this as an example that I don't believe that we simply put the history that surrounded that individual into the ground with them. I believe that we have to talk about the truth, and I believe that we have to talk about who they were historically, especially in our time, especially in my generation's time. And I do not believe for a moment that we should be silent about the way that they governed while they were here on earth. I said this even on social media. If you want to know who Elijah Cummings was to his constituents and to the people in his community and to the Black community, go to Baltimore, go to West Baltimore, go into his district and hear what the people have to say. And it is not a disrespectful thing to speak truth about that aspect of his life. And so no, I don't believe that we just simply slap the hand of anyone that comes in and says, this is the person that he was between this year and this year. This is Elijah Cummings. This is this woman. This is that man on paper. This is what he did. This is what his legacy literally boils down to. And talk about it honestly. I think we do that in America. I think sometimes we just want to put everything into the ground, and we don't want to be reminded of why we do what we do, of why we object, of why we're not silent, of why we pray, of why we intercede. Our children are going to have markers. And I want my children to know, every single person, the sound of their voice, who they were, their families, who they governed, people that they governed. I want my children to know every aspect of who that person was, so that they will know in the future how they should fight.